Well, the bad news is we haven't closed any deals of any magnitude in the last couple years. And the reason we haven't is we got outbid. We were in the market. We were strong in the market, but we were being outbid. You know what the good news is? We didn't do any deals. Luckily, we didn't win any of those deals because we would be underwater. I like to say there's no distressed real estate, only distressed sellers. The
Sellers.
real estate
Let me ask you about
tell us
that.
it can do.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pros Show, where we interview real estate investing professionals from coast to coast, as well as the service providers that serve the real estate investing industry. Our goal is simple: share what's working now to help you improve and scale your business to the next level and meet the pros that can help you get there. Real Estate Pros is powered by Investor Fuel, America's leader in helping real estate investors and professionals build the business you need to live the life you've always dreamed of. Let's start today's show. Property insurance for real estate investors doesn't have to be difficult, but it does need to be there to protect you when you need it. MyInvestorInsurance.com not only provides insurance at 15 to 30% cheaper than traditional agencies, it's built specifically for real estate investors like you. You can set up an account in about 2 minutes, get quotes on properties, turn on and turn off insurance for your fix and flip or rental properties in around 2 minutes without having to talk to anyone directly, all through our portal. There's no better way or faster way to make sure you've got the coverage you need to protect you, and no more lengthy policies either. Once you're set up, you're billed monthly and prorated by the day for however long your policy is active. It's powered by MSI, the third largest independent MGA, with 1.5 million customers and more than $1 billion in cumulative premiums written. Get set up today in about 2 minutes at myinvestorinsurance.com/fuel.
Hey, folks, welcome back to the show. Today's guest, Wayne Vandenburg, is in Frisco, Texas, and is a commercial real estate investor in the multifamily space. Wayne, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
It's great to have you. I was mentioning to you before hopping on, I had just come from Denton, which is neighbors. We're neighbors effectively. But before we get into, Texas real estate and then diving further into the commercial space, I do want to ask you about how you got into real estate. How did you get into real estate, Wayne?
Well, sort of basically through the back door. I was a real estate agent back in 1983, and I came across a property that was very interesting, and I thought I would take it to some investors after I analyzed it, and no one seemed to like the deal. And I tied it up as a broker, as a Wayne Vandenburg trustee, and was happened to be talking to some banker friends of mine, and they said, "Well, have you talked to your accountants?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And they said, "Well, why don't you talk to your accountants?" I talked to my accountants, who were with a firm that was later acquired by PwC, Price Waterhouse. And they said, "Well, we love the deal." And this was back in the days where you got big depreciation and big write-offs, pre-1986. And I took it to them, and they said, "God, let's do the deal." And I said, "Well, who's going to be the sponsor?" They said, "Well, you are. You found the deal." And I said, "Really? Well, wow, I'm going to be a sponsor." So I became the general partner of the transaction. We did extremely well on that property, and it opened the door to doing a lot of transactions. And barely was the ink getting dry on one contract where we had another deal under contract. We had another deal under contract, and we built a pretty big company. And at one time we owned as many as 85 properties and about 24,000 units at one particular time in history. And that was back in the mid 90s. And we went from, doing a syndication with, high net worth individuals, a few people, to being a sponsor for institutional investors, whether they were insurance companies or sovereign wealth funds, or they were pension funds of major industrials or insurance companies or whatever, and built a strong business. And over that period of time, we accumulated a lot of real estate.
I want to ask you about moving into the commercial real estate space. You mentioned as a broker, you were the sponsor for that first deal. Prior to that, were you involved heavily in the commercial space as a broker?
Stop living on an island and join the #1 mastermind in America for professional real estate investors. Investor Fuel is a community of hundreds of the nation's top investors working together to build stronger businesses and better lives. In addition to the amazing community of real estate investors acting as a board of advisors for one another, Investor Fuel members have access to 100% funding on purchase and repairs for our members only, a health insurance program, and benefits and discounts that more than pays for the membership of most of our members, meaning it's actually costing you money to not be a member of Investor Fuel. If you're looking to scale your business and build a business that allows you to live the life of your dreams, please visit investorfuel.com today and book a call with our team.
No, I went to college to be an architect. I found soon there I was an athlete. I was on an athletic scholarship at the University of New Mexico. And I found myself very involved in athletics, and I changed my major after my first year to education. And it wasn't so much that I had planned to teach school as much as I wanted to get into coaching. And I became the I became the assistant track coach at the University of New Mexico after I graduated for 2 years. And then when I was 24 years of age, I was appointed the head track and field coach at Texas El Paso. At that time, it was called Texas Western. They had just won the NCAA championships in basketball, beating Kentucky. And I was appointed, they were on a roll and they had really good football teams. And I was appointed the head track coach. And I was in track and field at the university until 1972. And then I went into the professional ranks and did some very interesting professional sports ventures. We bought a minor league baseball team. We did professional
Wow.
volleyball with Barry Gordy and Peter Uberoff, the commissioner of baseball, David Wolper, the Hollywood producer, and many big people out of the entertainment industry. And then we did professional track and field. We were the advent of professional track and field. And then in 1978, I had a friend that I was having more fun than I could afford in the professional sports arena, and I decided to get back to reality. And I had a friend that was in the real estate business, and he always got in love with the deal. And after he captured the deal, he sort of, went on to the next deal, and this one
Yep.
was always in trouble. So I came in to be a troubleshooter and solve problems. And in 1983, I said, I might as well do this for myself. If I'm going to solve somebody else's problems, I might as well solve my
Might have different. What were your events in track and field when you were in
both
school?
hurdles and the high jump and long jump. I was a good regional athlete. I was a good conference athlete in a very good conference, but on the national level, I was not competitive on the national level. I was good in the region, the mountain region, the Southwest.
Yeah.
I could always, score in 3 events or 4 events in the conference championships, but on a national scope, I didn't have it. Coaching,
Were you
different story. I had
200? Were you 400? What distance hurdles were you?
at that time you weren't running metric, you were running yards, so 120 yards
Okay.
and then the 440-yard intermediate hurdles, but basically nationally you were only running 330 yards until the national championships. You'd run 440 yards, and then the high jump and the long jump.
The longer hurdle distances are absolutely brutal. I marvel and think many people who compete athletically are unaware just how difficult that is. But at one point in time, I briefly did one season of winter track and got exposed to just how amazing that whole world
Yeah.
can be. I never did any shorter distances, but I felt like I was.
If you're looking for consistent, high-quality leads, look no further than Investor Machine. Investor Machine isn't just another agency, it's the most sophisticated, data-driven lead generation company on the planet for real estate investors. and serves the role of being not just a lead generator for your business, but a marketing partner that is helping you achieve your goals along the way. Go to investormachine.com to learn more and schedule a call with our team today.
Naturally more inclined to longer distances genetically, but not in the hurdles, just longer distances, mile, and then I ran 5Ks. But I do want to pivot back and ask you about the idea of sponsoring these deals. You know, when we talk about commercial real estate, these deals have sponsors. Break down that term for folks who may not be aware of what a sponsor
Well,
is.
sponsors, basically the guy who puts the deal together, acts as a general partner, gets the financing and is responsible for the affairs of the partnership. Even if you have a one partner, like let's just call it let's just use as an example the Honeywell Master Pension Trust or Delta Airlines Master Pension Trust or City of Boston's public employees pension fund or whatever. You partner with that group and, typically your partner, you may be the principal of that partnership, but typically you have other key investors within your sponsorship vehicle, that are, top employees or executives with the firm or whatever. And it's a collective effort because, the kind of transactions that you work on are, typically high 60 to 100 million, 150,
Yeah.
$200 million acquisitions. And, you finance anywhere from 50 to 65% of the purchase price. And it requires, 50 to 35 percent of the capitalization of the transaction is 35, is 35%. It's a, significant amount of money. $200 million deal is, call it, 70 million of equity. That's a lot of equity.
It's a lot of equity. I want to ask you a granular
Yeah,
question when we talk about putting these deals together. The commercial space, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm
sure.
wrong, tends to have an exit strategy around 5 years when you're looking at commercial residential apartment
Well,
complexes, when people are doing things like
yeah,
syndications.
it's basically what the market is what the investors want. It's not so much what you want as the sponsor. It's I remember years ago I talked to a guy that was the president of CB Richard Ellis. And in the early formation when CB Commercial, which was really Coldwell Banker Commercial, Coldwell Banker was owned by Sears at that time, and it had a residential
Mm,
and commercial platform. And when they sold off commercial Coldwell Banker's residential platform, they were left with a platform in commercial, and some investors bought it, and they wanted to keep the goodwill of Coldwell Bankers, so they named it CB Commercial, but they had to get rid of the CB at some point in time. And then it became CB Richard Ellis. They merged with a British firm called Richard Ellis. So
mm.
anyhow, I was talking to the president of CB Richard Ellis at the time, and he said, Wayne, this guy's name was Ray Ward, a great guy, great executive. He said, Wayne, I'm going to quit telling people, my clients, what they need, and I'm going to listen to what they want. I'm going to give them what they want. And most investors want flexibility in some way or form. And although they may own a piece of real estate 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever, they want to look at a near term horizon. So they typically say today's trend or the trend had been 5 years, and now it's probably people, because of the less of an ability to predict, if you could ever predict the future capital markets. If you look at the 5 year and the 7 year and the 10 year
Yeah.
treasuries, say there's not a whole lot of difference between, the 5 year and the 10 year treasury, 30 basis points, maybe 40 basis points, depending on any given day. And even the rate reductions don't seem to do much with, the treasury markets today. They'll
Right.
help the consumer, but they're not really doing much for the treasury market, quite frank, for the commercial guys. They tend to lean towards 5 to 7 years. And what you want to do is you want to take advantage of, I don't want to lock into a 10-year term because I've always got this feeling that rates need to come down. I mean, they truly need to come down to really stimulate the economy and help the consumer. You know,
Yeah.
the consumer, the home building industry, residential housing. I mean, this is like air,
Bread and butter.
oxygen. This is like sunlight. This is a
I want to ask you about
yeah,
that specifically. I know this is a little bit off topic because
sure.
you're talking about the commercial space, but right now we're hearing, interest rates are potentially coming down. I believe they did come down, but people will often say things like, well, in the 80s, the interest rates were high, right? You have been around for a full cycle in real estate. We're talking, 30, 40 years in the real estate space.
If you're a new or newer real estate investor looking to launch or grow your real estate investing business, please check out Investor Fuel Club. It's a coaching community, but unlike anything you've ever seen before. And you can actually partner with members of our mastermind from coast to coast on deals right in your market. There's no better opportunity to build a consistent business than to literally partner with pros to help you avoid costly mistakes, avoid the need for capital to do deals, and help you eliminate your fears as you're starting your business. Learn more about Investor Fuel Club at investorfuel.com/club.
When people refer back to the 80s as well, interest rates were high, is that a fair comparison or is that totally different?
Well, it just depends on the cycle, but let me give you an actual example. We did a Wall Street private placement. In other words, we securitized a portfolio of assets that today would be worth 800 or $900 million, maybe $1 billion, a portfolio of 23 properties. And Donaldson, Lufkin, Jenrette, which later became Credit Suisse, securitized the platform. And our partner in this securitization, the debt was 65%, and the equity was ourselves and the real estate advisor for the Honeywell Master Pension Trust. And that Master Pension Trust, they put in the equity. Our interest rate on our debt was 9.495% on a 30-year amortization. So it had principal and interest at 9.495%. We paid out monthly 12% minimum on the equity. That's how good the markets were, even in spite of the fact that you were paying a debt coupon with interest and principal reduction of probably 10.25% to 10.5% was your cost of debt. Think about that.
So would it be
You're
fair
getting
would it be
12%.
fair to say that yes, you had higher rates, interest rates were higher than they are today. However, the relative strength of the market effectively negated the potentially harmful impact of
High
higher
interest
rates, which
rates.
is
Yeah,
not happening as much today.
that's right. And that tells you where we've gone. Listen, bricks and mortar are something that's forever for all practical purposes. And hard assets are great assets for one to own, but you've got to be very careful. You can't bet the farm, in real estate where it's affected dramatically by
Yeah.
interest rates and movement in the interest rates. And that's what's happened. In 2000, rates were down to, 2.75%, 3%, so forth. And people were buying cap rates, commensurate real estate at, 3%, 3.25%. And all of a sudden today, the real market for real estate today, you hear all of this nonsense, and you have brokers telling sellers what they want to hear or owners what they want to hear. The real cost of capital is, you know, cap rates should be 5.5 to 6%. They should be. And I'm talking about high
Yeah.
quality assets. That's what they should be.
When we talk about this whole idea of, rising rates, comparing it to previous markets, but then also buying commercial real estate, one of the things that I've heard from other people in this space, in your space, in the commercial residential real estate space, buying apartment complexes and the like, is that when you're a smaller syndication, you can't really afford a bad deal versus if you're, an international conglomerate and you can afford, hey, this deal isn't making money right now. We can hold this. This one can lose money because we have other winners. It's a totally different process because when you can afford to lose versus when you're just starting out and this may be one of your first deals and you've got investors who are bought into you, it's a totally different dynamic.
Well, yes. Listen, no deal can afford to be, you don't buy anything to be on the losing end of a transaction. Okay. But that happens, and it happens when you get, when you compromise your principles. And it's easy to, to say here, God, we've never compromised our principles. Of course we have. We haven't intentionally done it, but we've compromised our principles. You know the old adage, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be
Probably
true.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And today you got to hold your spot. I mean, we were a big buyer, and the last several years, I mean, we've been basically shut out of the market because it's been overly competitive, and we have
Right.
felt people made bad choices. And we say, you want the good news or the bad news? Well, the bad news is we haven't closed any deals of any magnitude in the last couple years. And the reason we haven't is we got outbid. We were in the market, we were strong in the market, but we were being outbid. You know what the good news is? We don't, we didn't,
You're not holding on to those now.
we didn't do any deals. So when people ask
Yeah.
us, we'll be in a buyer's, an interview call with a seller on a property, say, well, how many assets have you bought? How many assets have you bought in the last couple of years? And I said, well, we've been active, but we haven't. Well, you haven't been active. No, we've been very active, but we've had many of these phone calls. But listen, our price is our price. We're as far into this as we think we can. And luckily, we didn't win any of those deals because we would be underwater. I like to say there's no distressed real estate. There's only distressed sellers. The
Sellers.
real
Let,
estate
let me ask you about that
jealousy from you. Yeah,
specifically. Because when we're talking, I come from the background of single family residential distress, right? So people
right.
entering probate, foreclosure, divorce, death, uh, any type of distress, financial, physical, emotional, that could cause someone to sell. When we're talking about the commercial space, I've heard, and you're not the first person, probably won't be the last to tell me that somewhere around 2020, people were buying over market for commercial property, or maybe before COVID, right? And now, 5 years later, this is coming back to bite a lot of people. If we look at just Texas specifically, are we about to see a wave, or is this already happening of apartment complexes that are underwater that are needing to sell because they haven't hit the predictions that they set out to hit 5 years ago?
Well, here's a good way to look at it. Okay. Nobody in their right mind would be selling real estate today if they didn't have to. Because it's not a good market it's a good market on the buy side because anybody who's selling, there's a reason they're selling. Okay. But as an owner, if you're listen, there's exceptions to every rule. Okay. Generally speaking, and I'm talking about 75% to 80% of the properties that are on the market, they're on the market for a specific reason. They need liquidity. Their partners are not going to fund any more deficits. Um, a loan is coming due. They borrowed in 2000. They had a very soft interest rate at, call it 3.5%. Today the rate's 5.5%. They can't get the same proceeds. There's been no growth. You've had to give concessions. There's big vacancies because too much supply in the market. Everybody, listen, we invest in primarily four markets. Okay. We invest in Chicago's at this point in time. I mean, we'll invest anywhere where we like the dynamics, but specifically Chicago, Washington, the MSA of Chicago, the MSA of Washington, D.C., the state of Florida, the state of Texas. Now, there's other great places. We've got great
Yeah.
experience in all those markets. We're comfortable with them. We understand the dynamics, and Washington, D.C. and Chicago are fabulous, not good, fabulous. They're one of the few places in the
Hmm.
country where you can point to great occupancies and rent growth. And Chicago especially, great rent growth.
We are coming up on time here. I do want to ask you about Chicago specifically. I'm surprised to hear this. A lot of times we hear maybe some negative news coming out of some major metros about how difficult it is to own property. You talk about rent growth. Is there something specific that's driving rent growth in Chicago versus other places of the country where you're seeing rents stabilize or even go down?
Well, other than the city lacks for leadership, and it has, suffered for lack of leadership for recent periods dramatically. Um, it's one of the great cities in the world. It's the third largest city in America. It's the third largest MSA in America. It's got, corporate titans there. It's one of it to me, it's the best city in America with if it had especially if it had positive leadership. But there's
Mm.
no new construction. That's what drives the
Oh,
no
wow.
new construction. And if you today went to Chicago and said, "I'm gonna buy that piece of
Hmm.
property, I wanna build here," you know what it takes you to get out of the ground? Probably 7 years.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, exactly. So if you don't have a
Is that
project
for single
today.
family as well?
Pardon me? No,
Is that for
no,
single family as well?
no.
Okay,
Commercial.
commercial.
Yeah, for commercial. It takes you forever permitting,
7
getting.
years.
Yeah, going through the urban planning, through your aldermen, fighting town halls, and so forth. It take you 5 to 7 years to get it out of the
There
ground.
there it is. So, yeah, you've
And
got no new
expensive.
construction.
And expensive.
Yeah,
Everything's union labor. Nothing against the
just
unions,
right.
but it's obviously more
It's a
expensive.
pretty penny.
Yeah, cost of
Yeah, I mean,
construction. And rents don't
I understand about
justify.
the union.
Yeah, and rents don't justify new construction. So if you've got something, you got value. So we're buying, 35% under replacement cost. I mean, the market is fabulous. The same thing with DC. We're working on a
Mm,
massive deal in Washington, DC. And it's Northern Virginia, anything around the MSA, MSA of DC is fabulous. And then of course, where do you want to be? You want to be in Texas and you want to be in Florida. Great leadership,
yep,
great tax advantages, pro business, and especially Texas. There's no geographical boundaries in Texas, only when you get to the Gulf
that's
of
right.
America, I might add.
Eh,
The Gulf of America, I might
there
add.
you go.
That's right, and
I
you
could continue to
don't have
talk
any
to you.
lake. Yeah, you don't have any oceans, you don't have any lakes. I mean, you don't have any mountains, you don't have anything that's gonna stop your ability to go, and, the metro markets and the major cities of those are all overbuilt, but the thing is,
Yeah.
they will get occupied because of the growth
Mhm,
factor. It's gonna
mhm.
take a year or 2. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. I could continue to talk to you about Texas real estate and even Florida, which parts of Florida. I'm a big Florida fan, really, of all things Florida, and of course, licensed in Texas. But we are coming up on time here, Wayne. How can folks find you? Where can folks reach out to you?
Well, our website is VDB, like Vandenburg, VDB, Victor David Bravo, group, spelled the French way, Groupe, group spelled with a little E at the end of group.com. That's our website. And our operating business is basically VDB Asset Management. And so that's W. Vandenburg or any of the senior officers, first initial, last name. You'll see it on the website at vdb-am.com. But all that
Wayne,
information.
thank you.
Pardon me?
Wayne, thank you so much for coming on
Thank
the
you
show here
for the
today. Thank
day.
you for
No,
coming
I
on the show.
appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks for joining us for today's Real Estate Pros Show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing for your deals, and members only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. visit investorfuel.com to learn more. If you're interested in joining us as a guest of this show, please visit investorfuel.com/pros to apply. You can also check the show notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and much more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next show.